What if the most valuable lesson about success didn't come from a billionaire, a television studio, or a sold-out auditorium, but from an ordinary man whose greatest possession couldn't be measured in dollars? It sounds almost impossible in a world that celebrates fame more than character, but sometimes life has a strange way of placing extraordinary wisdom inside the most unexpected people. There are moments that divide a person's life into two chapters: the person they were before and the person they became after. For Steve Harvey, according to this fictional story, that moment wasn't a television appearance or another career milestone. It was an unexpected encounter with a humble Muslim during the sacred days of Muharram. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about the man. He wasn't surrounded by cameras. He wasn't wearing expensive clothes. Nobody recognized his name. Yet there was something impossible to ignore about the peace on his face. It wasn't the kind of smile people put on for photographs. It was the quiet confidence of someone who wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. In a world where people constantly compete for attention, he carried himself as though attention meant nothing at all. That alone sparked curiosity. Success usually teaches people to speak louder, but this man seemed to become quieter the more wisdom he carried. Their paths crossed unexpectedly during a charity gathering where people from different backgrounds had come together. While others rushed from conversation to conversation, hoping to meet influential guests, the Muslim man stood in the corner patiently, helping elderly visitors find seats, carrying boxes without being asked, smiling at strangers without expecting anything in return. Nobody applauded him. Nobody pointed a camera toward him. Yet somehow his actions stood out more than every speech delivered that evening. Watching him raised a question that refused to disappear. Why did the happiest person in the room seem to be the one asking for nothing? Eventually, a brief introduction led to a conversation. It didn't begin with religion. It began with life. They talked about work, family, responsibility, and the pressure that success places on people. The Muslim listened far more than he spoke. Every answer was thoughtful. Every sentence carried calmness instead of ego. Then he said something so simple that it lingered long after the conversation moved on. People spend their whole lives trying to impress the world while forgetting to prepare their hearts. The sentence was short, yet it felt heavier than many motivational speeches. Modern culture teaches people how to become successful, but very few teach them how to remain peaceful after success arrives. That single thought opened the door to a much deeper conversation. The Muslim explained that every morning millions of people wake up believing happiness is waiting on the other side of more money, more recognition, or more achievements. They work harder, earn more, and climb higher, only to discover that peace cannot be purchased. Wealth changes comfort, but it doesn't automatically change the condition of the heart. The most successful people often continue searching because the soul asks questions that money cannot answer. Looking around at the fast pace of modern life, those words felt impossible to ignore. Everywhere people chase bigger houses, newer cars, larger audiences, and higher positions, yet anxiety, loneliness, and depression continue growing. How could a society become richer while so many people felt spiritually poor? The Muslim smiled gently and replied that perhaps people had confused success with purpose. Success answers the question, what have I achieved? Purpose answers the question, why was I created? Those are two very different journeys. One can fill a calendar, the other fills the heart. As the evening continued, stories replaced arguments. The Muslim never claimed to be perfect. Instead, he spoke openly about his own struggles. explaining that faith wasn't about pretending life was easy. Faith was remembering Allah even when life became difficult. He described prayer not as an obligation weighing people down, but as an opportunity to stop carrying the weight of the world alone. Imagine pausing several times every day to disconnect from pressure, ego, competition, and fear, simply to remember the one who controls everything beyond human ability. That perspective transformed the meaning of discipline. It wasn't about restriction. It was about freedom from constant worry. One question naturally followed. What gives you this kind of peace? The Muslim looked upward for a brief moment before answering quietly, knowing that everything I have is temporary, but Allah is eternal. There was no dramatic delivery, no attempt to sound impressive, just quiet certainty. That answer carried unusual power because it challenged one of society's biggest illusions that lasting happiness can be found in temporary things. Careers change, health changes, fame fades, beauty changes, wealth comes and goes. If every source of confidence depends entirely on temporary circumstances, then peace becomes temporary too. But if confidence rests on something eternal, the heart remains steady even when life becomes uncertain. That idea stayed in the mind long after the conversation ended. Days later, ordinary moments began looking different. Crowded airports, television studios, business meetings, and public events all revealed the same pattern. So many people smiled for the cameras but looked exhausted the moment the lights disappeared. Some possessed enormous influence but seemed trapped by the fear of losing it. Others constantly sought approval from strangers because they had forgotten how to value themselves without applause. The lesson from that evening quietly returned again and again. Character survives after applause ends. Integrity remains when nobody is watching. Peace doesn't come from being admired. Peace comes from knowing who you are when the world stops looking. Another memory from that conversation refused to fade. While discussing ambition, the Muslim explained that Islam never discourages excellence. In fact, believers are encouraged to work honestly, pursue knowledge, and serve society. The difference lies in intention. Ambition becomes dangerous only when it replaces gratitude. Success becomes empty when it creates arrogance instead of humility. A person may become wealthy while remaining generous. They may become famous while remaining kind. They may become powerful while remembering that every blessing ultimately belongs to Allah. Those words created a balance rarely discussed in today's world. Modern culture often presents two extremes. Either reject worldly success completely or chase it at any cost. Yet the conversation suggested another path: work hard, dream boldly, but never allow achievements to define your worth. Your value begins long before anyone applauds your accomplishments. Walking away from that encounter, one realization became impossible to escape. The people who leave the deepest impact on others are rarely those who speak the loudest. They are often those whose lives quietly reflect the values they believe in. Their patience during hardship inspires more than speeches. Their honesty during temptation teaches more than lectures. Their gratitude during success shines brighter than trophies. Perhaps that is why one humble Muslim could leave such a lasting impression, not because he claimed to possess every answer, but because his life itself became the answer to questions many successful people had been asking for years without realizing it. The next morning, that conversation refused to disappear. Some encounters end the moment people walk away, but others quietly continue in the mind for weeks, changing the way ordinary life is seen. This was one of those encounters. Every meeting, every interview, every audience, every moment of applause suddenly carried a different meaning. It wasn't that success had become less valuable. It was that success alone no longer seemed complete. The words of the humble Muslim continued echoing. The heart needs purpose just as much as the mind needs ambition. That sentence became impossible to ignore because everywhere there were examples proving it true. There were people with enormous wealth who couldn't sleep peacefully. There were celebrities admired by millions who privately battled loneliness. There were business leaders who had conquered industries but still felt something missing every time the day ended. It raised an uncomfortable question. If money, recognition, and influence were enough, why were so many successful people still searching for happiness? A few days later, another opportunity came to meet the same Muslim during a community gathering. Once again, he arrived early, not to be recognized, but simply to help. He greeted everyone with the same warmth, whether they were important guests or volunteers arranging chairs. There was no difference in the way he treated people. That consistency was rare. Most people become kinder when someone influential walks into the room. This man treated every person as though they carried equal value. Watching that simple behavior reveals something powerful. Character is what remains when nobody is trying to impress anyone. During a quiet moment, another conversation began. This time, the subject was success. The question was simple. How do you stay humble when life is going well? The Muslim smiled gently before answering. Because every blessing can disappear tomorrow. If I become arrogant over something Allah allowed me to have today, what happens if He takes it away tomorrow? Gratitude protects the heart from pride. Those words settle deeply because modern society often encourages people to believe they created every blessing entirely by themselves. Hard work certainly matters, but every opportunity, every talent, every healthy day, every relationship, every open door is also a gift. Forgetting that truth quietly feeds arrogance. Remembering it creates gratitude. Gratitude changes everything. It changes the way success feels. It changes the way people treat others. It changes the way problems are viewed. Another question followed naturally. What if life becomes difficult? What if everything starts falling apart? The Muslim paused before answering. Then faith becomes even more important. Anybody can smile when life is easy. Real faith appears when life becomes hard. Those words carried enormous weight because everyone eventually experiences loss. Nobody escapes disappointment. Money cannot prevent heartbreak. Fame cannot stop illness. Influence cannot delay death. Every human being eventually stands before moments that cannot be solved by status alone. The Muslim explained that Islam teaches believers to trust Allah during both success and hardship, gratitude during blessings, patience during trials. Neither situation lasts forever. That balance creates emotional strength. Looking around the room, people were laughing, talking, checking their phones, celebrating small victories, worrying about tomorrow, rushing through conversations. Life moved quickly, yet very few seemed truly present. The Muslim noticed this too. He quietly said, people have become experts at being busy, but beginners at being peaceful. That sentence almost stopped time. Busy but not peaceful, productive but not fulfilled, connected online but disconnected from themselves. It perfectly described the condition of modern life. Technology had made communication faster, but inner peace still requires something much deeper. Another topic slowly emerged. Forgiveness, the Muslim explained that carrying anger is like carrying a heavy stone every day, while hoping someone else becomes tired. The person being hated often continues living peacefully, while the one holding resentment slowly exhausts themselves. Forgiveness does not always mean pretending wrong never happened. It means refusing to allow bitterness to become permanent. That perspective challenged something deeply rooted in modern culture, where revenge is often celebrated more than mercy. Choosing forgiveness requires strength because it demands control over the ego. The conversation then turned toward prayer. Instead of describing prayer as a ritual, the Muslim described it as a daily reset. Imagine stopping several times every day to remember that the world does not revolve around you, that every problem has limits, and that Allah's wisdom extends beyond human understanding. That regular reminder changes perspective. Small problems stop appearing enormous. Temporary setbacks stop feeling permanent. Anxiety slowly loses some of its power because the heart remembers who ultimately controls the future. Listening carefully, another realization began forming. Modern society constantly teaches people to improve their external lives, better careers, healthier bodies, larger homes, greater influence, but very little attention is given to improving the inner life. Yet the inner life determines how every external achievement feels. Two people may possess identical success, but one experiences peace while the other experiences constant fear.